On the day I signed for my first house, the only witness was the loan officer. 3 days later, my mother texted asking for $40,000 for my brother instead of saying congratulations. A week later, police arrived because my family claimed I was unstable for cutting them off. They did not know I had found the loans they took out in my name. I did not destroy my family. I just finally unplugged the machine. My name is Paige Hamilton, and for the last 6 years, I have made my living selling other people their dreams. I work for Blue Harbor Realty here in Rochester, New York, and I have stood in grand foyers, pointed out crown molding, and handed over heavy brass keys to smiling couples more times than I can count. I know exactly what the happiest day of a person's life is supposed to look like. I have seen the tears, the hugs, the champagne popping in the driveway. I have seen fathers clap their sons on the back and mothers weep over the nursery. I know the script by heart. But on the Tuesday afternoon that I finally bought a dream of my own, the script was blank. I sat in the closing room of the title company office, a sterile box of a room with gray carpeting that smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The air conditioner hummed with a low, aggressive drone, fighting against the humid Rochester summer outside. The fluorescent lights overhead were too bright, buzzing with a frequency that seemed to vibrate right behind my eyes. I was 29 years old. I had just closed enough deals in the last fiscal quarter to secure a down payment on a 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with old maple trees and sidewalks that children drew on with chalk. It was a monumental achievement. It was the finish line of a marathon I had been running since I was 16 years old, working double shifts and saving every spare dime while my friends went to parties. And I was completely, utterly alone. Across the mahogany conference table, the settlement agent, a kind but weary man named Mr. Henderson, shuffled a stack of documents that looked to be about 3 inches thick. The sound of the paper sliding against the wood was the only noise in the room aside from the ventilation. Swish, tap, swish, tap. I looked at the chairs beside me. There were 4 chairs on my side of the table. I occupied the one in the center. To my left, an empty chair upholstered in generic blue fabric. To my right, 2 more. They sat there in a perfect, accusing row. I had texted the time and location to my family group chat 2 weeks ago. I had reminded them 3 days ago. I had sent a pin of the location yesterday morning. Closing is at 2 in the afternoon. I had written, "Would love for you guys to be there." My brother, Derek, had read the message. The little read receipt icon had confirmed it. My mother had liked the message. My father had not responded, which was typical, but I assumed Mom would organize him. I checked my watch. It was 10 minutes past 2. "Okay, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Henderson said, sliding a document toward me. He uncapped a heavy, expensive-looking rollerball pen and placed it on the paper with a precise click. "This is the deed of trust, the big one. Once you sign this, the house is officially yours." I picked up the pen. My hand was steady, which surprised me. I had expected to shake. I signed my name, Paige Hamilton, the loops of the letters tight and controlled. "Mr. Henderson pulled the paper back, stamped it, and then looked up. He adjusted his glasses and glanced at the empty chairs beside me. He smiled, but it was that pitying smile, the kind people give you when they see you eating dinner alone at a restaurant on a Friday night. "Big day," he said. "Congratulations on the first home. It is a beautiful property. I know that neighborhood well." "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded thin in the quiet room. "I have loved that street since I started in real estate." He hesitated, tapping the file folder. "Family not joining you for the big moment? Usually, we have a full house for a first-time buyer." The question hung in the air, sharp and unavoidable. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. I could have told him the truth. I could have said, "They are not here because unless I am handing them a check, I do not exist." I could have said, "They are probably at home right now, watching television, because my brother did not feel like driving." Instead, I gave the reflex answer, the answer I had been trained to give since I was a child to cover up the cracks in the Ellison family foundation. "Oh, They wanted to be here, I lied, forcing a bright, professional smile. But my dad got stuck at work, and my mom, well, the traffic coming from Fairview is terrible at this time of day. You know how the highway gets. Of course, Mr. Henderson said, nodding too quickly. He did not believe me. The highway was clear at 2 in the afternoon. We both knew it. Well, I am sure they are celebrating with you in spirit. Absolutely, I said. Just then, the heavy door to the conference room swung open, and Maddie burst in. Maddie was my colleague at Blue Harbor, a firecracker of a woman with red hair and an inability to use an indoor voice. She was the only reason I did not feel like I was drowning in that room. I made it, she announced, breathless. She was holding her phone in one hand and a bottle of sparkling apple cider in the other because she knew I had to drive back to the office. Please tell me I did not miss the signature shot. Just finished, I said, and the relief that washed over me was so strong I almost cried. Hi, Maddie. Hi, yourself. Homeowner. She rushed over and squeezed my shoulders. She looked at the empty chairs, and for a split second, her expression darkened. She knew the truth about my family, but she recovered instantly. She was a pro. She would not let me sit in the awkward silence. Okay, stand up, she commanded, backing away and holding up her phone. We need a picture for the company Instagram, the new house bride shot. Let's go. Hold up the keys. Mr. Henderson helpfully slid a set of brass keys across the table. I stood up, smoothing down my blazer. I picked up the keys and the heavy folder of signed documents. Big smile. Paige, you just bought a house. You are a boss, Maddie cheered. I smiled. I held up the keys. Click. Gorgeous, Maddie said, checking the screen. I am going to caption it. She sells them. Now she owns one. Congrats to our superstar Paige. She looked up at me, her eyes soft. I am really proud of you. Paige, I know how hard you saved for this. Thanks, Mads, I said, and my throat felt tight. Really, thank you for coming. I would not miss it, she said. She glanced at the clock. I have a showing in 30 minutes over in Brighton, so I have to run. But drinks on Friday? My treat? Definitely, I said. She hugged me again, a quick, fierce squeeze, and then she was gone, leaving a swirl of floral perfume in her wake. The energy sucked out of the room with her, leaving me back in the quiet with Mr. Henderson and the hum of the air conditioner. All set, Ms. Hamilton, he said, handing me the final packet. Here is your copy. Welcome to homeownership. I took the folder. It was heavy, a solid brick of paper that represented 30 years of debt and a lifetime of security. Thank you. I walked out of the office and into the parking lot. The sky was a flat, slate gray, typical for upstate New York. The humidity hit me like a wall. I walked to my car, a reliable 4-year-old sedan that I kept immaculately clean for clients. My heels clicked rhythmically on the asphalt. Click, clack, click, clack. I unlocked the car and tossed the heavy folder onto the passenger seat. It landed with a dull thud. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared at the folder for a moment. That seat should have been occupied. My mom should have been sitting there, reaching over to touch the papers, asking me about paint colors. My dad should have been in the back, making jokes about how much lawn mowing I had in my future. Derek should have been complaining about how hungry he was and demanding we go to a steakhouse. Even their complaints would have been better than this silence. It is fine, I said aloud to the empty car. I am used to doing this alone. It was true. I had gone to my college graduation alone because Derek had a minor flu and Mom could not leave him. I had moved into my first apartment alone. I had spent my 25th birthday alone because they forgot. And when I reminded them, they said they were too tired to go out. This was just another milestone on the list. I started the engine and pulled out onto the main road. I needed to go back to my rental apartment to start packing the final boxes. I had the keys now. I could start moving in tonight if I wanted to. My phone, mounted on the dashboard, lit up. Missed call, Dad. My heart gave a stupid, Traitorous little leap. Maybe they were calling to apologize. Maybe they had planned a surprise party. Maybe they were at the new house right now, waiting for me. I tapped the screen to see the notification history. 7 missed calls from Dad in the last 3 hours. I scrolled down. No text messages, no voicemails. If Ray Ellison was calling me 7 times without leaving a message, it was not because he wanted to shout congratulations from the rooftops. If he was proud, he would have texted. If he was happy for me, he would have left a voicemail singing or making a dad joke. Multiple missed calls with no message meant only one thing in the Ellison household: urgency without sentiment. It meant a bill was due. It meant a car had broken down. It meant Derek needed something and they needed me to facilitate it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I ignored the urge to call back. I was not going to let them ruin this hour. Just this 1 hour. I drove the 20 minutes back to my apartment on autopilot. I listened to the tires hum on the pavement. I watched the familiar streets of Rochester roll by. The brick buildings, the diner on the corner, the park where I used to jog to clear my head. When I got inside my apartment, it was chaos. Cardboard boxes were stacked everywhere. The walls were bare, leaving outlined ghosts where my pictures used to hang. It felt transient. It felt like a place that was already forgetting me. I put the house file on the kitchen island, the only surface that was not covered in tape and bubble wrap. The silence here was different than the silence in the mortgage office. It was personal. I took my phone out again. Still no texts from Mom. No, "We are so sorry we missed it." Just a notification from my bank app about the closing costs withdrawing, and a few work emails from clients asking about square footage. I looked at the house file. I looked at the keys sitting on top of it. I picked up the keys and held them up against the backdrop of the messy apartment. I reversed the camera on my phone. I looked at myself on the screen. My smile looked tight, the edges straining. My eyes looked tired. I adjusted the angle, trying to find the light, trying to look like the triumphant, successful woman Maddie had photographed earlier. Click. I lowered the phone and looked at the photo. There I was, Paige Hamilton, homeowner. The background was blurry, the keys were sharp, and there was no one else in the frame. No shoulder to lean on, no hand on my arm. I realized then that the hardest part was not signing the papers or coming up with the down payment. The hardest part was the realization that I had climbed the mountain, planted the flag, and when I turned around to wave at the people who were supposed to be watching from the base camp, the valley was empty. I was the only witness to my own life. I set the phone down, face down, so I would not have to look at the notifications. I went to the fridge and opened a bottle of cheap white wine. I poured a glass and raised it to the empty room. "Cheers, Paige," I whispered. "Welcome home." I drank the wine, and it tasted like vinegar. I did not know it then, but the silence of that night was the last peaceful silence I would have for a long time. The phone was going to ring again soon, and when it did, the silence would be replaced by a noise much louder and much more destructive than I could have ever imagined. 3 days had passed since I sat alone in that cold conference room. 3 days of silence from the people who shared my DNA. I was sitting at my desk at Blue Harbor Realty, surrounded by the quiet hum of productivity. My desk was a sprawling mess of potential. I had a catalog of quartz countertops open to a page featuring a beautiful veined marble called Calicotta Gold. Beside it lay a strip of paint swatches in varying shades of sage green. For the first time in my life, I was not looking at these things for a client. I was not calculating the return on investment for a flipper or trying to convince a nervous young couple that the kitchen island was worth the extra cost. I was choosing them for me. The morning sun was cutting through the blinds, warming the back of my neck. I took a sip of my coffee, allowing myself a rare moment of peace. I had achieved the American dream. I had the keys in my pocket. I had a 30-year fixed mortgage. I was safe. Then, my phone buzzed against the hardwood of the desk. It was a sharp, aggressive vibration that shattered the calm. I glanced at the screen. Mom. My stomach did that familiar, involuntary flip. a conditioned reflex honed over 2 decades of bad news. I waited for the follow-up text. Maybe, just maybe. 3 days was the refractory period for their guilt. Maybe this was the apology. Maybe this was the congratulations, we are so proud, we just got caught up with life message. I unlocked the phone. Derek is in a bad spot. His credit cards are maxed out again and the transmission on his Jetta died. He can't get to interviews. We need you to float him $40,000. Just this one last time. He's really down about you buying a house while he is struggling. We cannot let him feel like his little sister is outshining him. It is bad for his mental health. Transfer it to my account today. I read the message twice, then a third time. I did not feel angry at first. I felt a strange, detached numbness, like I was reading a script from a bad soap opera. $40,000. Not a request, a demand. And the reasoning was so twisted it was almost impressive. My success was not a cause for celebration. It was a weapon I had unknowingly wielded against my brother's fragile ego. The phrase "one last time" echoed in my head, bouncing around like a coin in an empty dryer. One last time. I looked away from the phone, staring at the paint swatches until the greens blurred together. That phrase was the soundtrack of my adolescence. I remembered being 16 years old. It was a Tuesday in November. Freezing cold. I was working at a retail chain in the mall, folding sweaters for minimum wage. I had been saving for 3 months to buy a pair of boots because my sneakers had a hole in the sole, and every time it rained, my socks got soaked. I had wet feet for 6 hours a day. Mom had picked me up that night in her beat-up sedan. She did not ask how my shift was. She just held out her hand. I need your check. Paige, Derek wants to go to that baseball camp in Florida. It is a huge opportunity for scouts to see him. Just this one last time, we will pay you back. I gave her the check. I always gave her the check. Derek went to Florida. He quit the camp on the second day because the coach was too intense and spent the rest of the week at the beach. When he came back, he had a tan and a new customized glove. I walked to school in the snow with plastic bags wrapped around my socks inside my leaking sneakers. That was the dynamic. That was the law of the Ellison household. Derek was the golden child, the dreamer, the visionary who was always one lucky break away from greatness. He was 31 years old now. He had started and abandoned 5 different college degrees. He had tried to be a DJ, a crypto trader, a semi-pro gamer, and a life coach. I was the reliable one, the sturdy one, the ATM. While Derek was finding himself in Europe on a trip my parents financed by refinancing their home, I was working double shifts at a diner to pay for my community college textbooks. While Derek showed up to Christmas with nothing but a laundry bag for Mom to wash, wearing a $300 smartwatch, I was the one bringing the ham, the gifts, and the envelope of cash to help Dad with the heating bill. And now, they wanted $40,000, a car loan's worth of money, because he felt outshined. I looked at the Calicotta gold countertop on the page before me. It cost $4,000. I had debated that purchase for weeks, wondering if it was too indulgent. I picked up the phone. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. The old Paige, the Paige who sat alone at her closing to avoid conflict, would have tried to negotiate. She would have offered $5,000. She would have apologized for not having more. But the silence in that closing room had changed something in me. The image of those empty chairs was burned into my retinas. I typed, "Mom, I just spent my entire life savings on the down payment and closing costs for the house. I do not have $40,000. Even if I did, I cannot enable Derek anymore. He is 31. He needs to figure this out on his own. I am not sending any money." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. I put the phone down face down. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of fear and adrenaline. It was the first time I had ever said a hard no. Not a maybe later, not a let me see what I can do, but a flat refusal. The phone rang instantly. The screen lit up with Mom. I took a deep breath, picked it up, and slid the green icon. "Hello?" "Paige Hamilton." Linda Ellison's voice was not a scream. It was a low, trembling vibrato of disappointment that she had perfected over years. I am staring at this text message, and I honestly do not recognize the person who sent it. Are you drunk? I am at work, Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady, though my hand was gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles were white. And I meant what I said. I do not have the money. Do not lie to me, she snapped. I know you. You always have a safety net. You are a hoarder. Paige, you have been stashing money away since you were 12. You think we do not know? That money went into the house, I said. The house you did not come to see. The house you did not congratulate me on. Oh, stop it, she scoffed. Do not try to make this about you being a victim. You know how hard it is for your father to get time off. And Derek is in a crisis. Paige, he is depressed. He sees you posting pictures of your big new house, bragging to the world, while he is sitting there with no car and debt collectors calling. Do you have any idea how selfish that makes you look? Selfish? I almost laughed. It would have been a hysterical, ugly sound. I worked for this, Mom. I worked 60-hour weeks. Derek has not held a job for more than 6 months in his entire life. He has potential, she shouted, her voice cracking. He has big ideas. He is not like you. Paige, he is not built for drudgery. He is special, and family protects family. We carried you when you were nothing. We put a roof over your head. And I paid for that roof, I cut in. I paid the electric bill when I was 17. I paid for the groceries this past year. I have paid my dues. There was a pause on the other line, a heavy, breathing silence. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. It was no longer angry. It was icy, clinical, and terrifying. You are sounding very erratic. Paige, she said softly, very unstable. I have been worried about you lately. You are imagining things. You are rewriting history to make yourself look like a martyr. It is not normal. I am not imagining anything, I said. Are you sure? She purred. Because cutting off your family, hoarding money, refusing to help your brother in a life-or-death financial crisis? That sounds like a breakdown to me. Nobody knows what is going on in that head of yours. Paige, maybe the stress of this house is too much for you. Maybe you are not thinking clearly. The threat was vague, wrapped in faux concern, but it landed with the precision of a sniper shot. She was gaslighting me. She was planting the seed that my refusal was not a financial decision, but a symptom of mental illness. I am perfectly fine, I said, my voice cold steel. The answer is no. Do not ask me for money again. Paige, if you hang up... I pulled the phone away from my ear and tapped the red button. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my office. The sun was still shining on the paint swatches. The Calicotta gold was still beautiful, but the air in the room felt thinner, sharper. My hands were shaking, not a little tremble, but a violent rattle that traveled from my fingers up to my elbows. I placed them flat on the desktop, pressing down with all my weight to make them stop. I had done it. I had cut the supply line. I expected to feel guilty. I had been programmed to feel guilty. But as my heart rate began to slow, replacing the panic was a sensation I had never felt before. It was clarity. They did not care that I had achieved something great. They only cared that my achievement meant I had resources they were not tapping into. To them, I was not a daughter or a sister. I was a resource. I was a livestock animal that had wandered out of the pen, and they were trying to lasso me back in. I looked at the text message again. $40,000. I selected the message, I took a screenshot, then I opened a new folder on my phone, labeled it Family, and saved the image. I did not know why I did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the real estate agent in me, knowing that you always keep a paper trail. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where my sensible sedan was parked. I thought about Derek, probably sitting on Mom's couch right now, playing video games, waiting for the notification that the transfer was complete so he could go buy a car he did not deserve. Not this time, I whispered to the glass. Never again. I went back to my desk and closed the catalog. I had work to do. I had a life to build. And for the first time, I realized that building my life meant demolishing the bridge back to them. I just did not know that while I was busy burning the bridge, they were already on the other side, lighting a match to blow up the foundation I was standing on. It had been exactly 7 days since I told my mother no. 7 days of radio silence. I had expected a barrage of texts, maybe a guilt-tripping voicemail from my father, or a drunken, rambling message from Derek accusing me of ruining his life, but there had been nothing. The silence felt heavy, like the drop in air pressure before a tornado touches down. But I tried to convince myself it was peace. I tried to tell myself that maybe, just maybe, they had finally respected a boundary. I was wrong. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Outside, the Rochester sky was already pitch black. I was standing in the kitchenette of my rental apartment, watching the carousel of the microwave spin a slice of leftover pepperoni pizza. I was wearing oversized sweatpants and a t-shirt that said Blue Harbor Realty Top Producer, hair tied up in a messy bun. My laptop was open on the counter, displaying an email draft to a client regarding an inspection contingency. It was a normal, boring, wonderfully quiet night. The microwave beeped 3 times. I reached for the handle. And then the room exploded in color. Red and blue light slashed through the horizontal blinds of the living room window, sweeping across my beige walls in a dizzying, strobe-like rhythm. It was violent and intrusive, transforming my sanctuary into a crime scene in the span of a heartbeat. I froze. My first instinct, the one ingrained in me from childhood, was panic. Is it Dad? Did he have a heart attack? Did Derek crash the car he doesn't have? Then came the knock. It was not a polite, neighborly tap. It was a heavy, authoritative pounding that rattled the door in its frame. Bam, bam, bam. Rochester Police, open up! The slice of pizza slid from my hand back onto the plate. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic drum solo. I walked to the door, my legs feeling like they were moving through water. I pressed my eye to the peephole. Distorted by the fisheye lens, I saw 2 uniformed officers standing on my welcome mat. One was a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. Officer Carver. I would learn. The other was a younger woman, sharp-eyed, with her hand resting casually near her belt. Officer Mills. I took a deep breath. I have done nothing wrong. I told myself, I am a homeowner. I am a taxpayer. I am safe. I unlocked the deadbolt, but I kept the security chain engaged. I cracked the door open 3 inches. The cool night air rushed in, carrying the crackle of a police radio. "Can I help you, officers?" I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady, pitched low and calm. Officer Carver looked down at me through the crack. He did not look aggressive, but he looked weary. He held a small notepad in his hand. "Are you Paige Hamilton?" he asked. "I am." "We received a call requesting a wellness check on a female at this address," Carver said. He was reciting a script, but his eyes were scanning the sliver of my apartment he could see. The callers, a Mr. and Mrs. Ellison, stated that they are your parents. They reported that you have been exhibiting erratic behavior, have cut off all contact, and they have reason to believe you may be a danger to yourself due to a mental health crisis. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Erratic behavior. Danger to yourself. It was a masterstroke. It was brilliant, really. They knew I would not answer the phone, so they sent the only people I could not ignore. They had weaponized the police force to punish me for closing my wallet. They wanted to humiliate me. They wanted to scare me back into submission. I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. If I got angry, if I yelled, if I cried, I would prove my parents right. I would be the erratic daughter. "I see," I said. I met Carver's eyes. "Officers, I am a licensed real estate agent. I just closed on a house last week. I am currently working on a contract negotiation. I am not in crisis. My parents are upset because I refused to lend my brother $40,000 for a car." Officer Mills stepped a little closer, tilting her head. "Ma'am, we still need to visually verify that you are safe and that there is no immediate threat. Do you mind if we come in for a minute? Just to clear the call." I hesitated for a fraction of a second. I knew my rights. I could refuse, but refusal would look suspicious. Refusal would give them a reason to come back. "Of course," I said. "Let me get the chain." I closed the door, slid the chain off, and opened it wide. I stepped back, inviting the scrutiny of the state into my living room. The officers stepped inside. They brought the smell of the outdoors and the tension of the street with them. They did not touch their weapons, but their posture was alert. They swept the room with their eyes. What they saw was not a drug den. It was not a scene of destruction. It was not the home of a woman losing her mind. It was a small, clean apartment in the middle of being packed. Cardboard boxes were stacked neatly against the wall, labeled kitchen, books, master bedroom in clear, black marker. My vacuum cleaner was standing in the corner. On the kitchen island, my laptop was glowing. Beside it was a stack of mortgage documents and a thick cream-colored envelope with the Blue Harbor Realty logo and the words, "Congratulations on your new home," printed in gold foil. "Nice place," Officer Mills said. Her tone had shifted. The edge was gone. She walked over to the counter, not touching anything, just looking. She saw the email on the screen. She saw the half-heated pizza. She saw the bottle of water. "I am in the middle of packing," I explained, gesturing to the boxes. "I am moving into my new place on Saturday. That is why things are a bit bare." Officer Carver stood in the center of the living room, looking at me. "Ms. Hamilton, have you had any thoughts of hurting yourself today? Or hurting anyone else?" "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not." "Have you been taking any medication recently? Or using any substances?" "I take a multivitamin," I said. "And I had a glass of wine with dinner 3 nights ago. That is it." Carver nodded. He looked at the boxes again. Then he looked at the phone sitting on the counter, which was silent. "Your parents said you changed the locks on your home and refused to let them in," Carver said. "They said you were shouting at them through the door." "I live here alone," I said, pointing to the rental agreement taped to the fridge, a habit I had developed to keep track of dates. "My parents live 40 minutes away in Fairview. They have not been to this apartment in 6 months. I did not shout at anyone because no one has been here. And as for the locks, I bought a new house. I'm changing the locks there because that is what you do when you buy a property. It is standard safety procedure." Officer Mills turned from the counter. She looked at Carver and gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. It was a code between partners. "She is fine. This is bogus." "You said this was about money?" Mills asked. She sounded less like a cop and more like a human being now. "My brother has significant debt," I said, choosing my words with the precision of a lawyer. "My mother asked me to cover it. I refused because I just put my savings into my down payment. When I said no, my mother told me I was unstable for not helping family. I stopped answering their calls 3 days ago to avoid the argument. I assume this call to you was their way of getting my attention." Carver let out a long breath, the kind that signaled the end of a long shift full of unnecessary drama. He closed his notebook. "It happens more than you would think," Carver said, his voice dropping an octave. "Civil disputes dressed up as emergencies." "I am sorry your time was wasted," I said. "I know you have real emergencies to attend to." "It is part of the job," Carver said. He looked at me, and his expression hardened slightly, not at me, but for me. "Ms. Hamilton, you seem perfectly fine. Your home is orderly. You are lucid. We are going to mark this call as unfounded. You are not a danger to anyone." "Thank you," I said. The relief made my knees feel weak, but I kept standing tall. They turned to leave. Officer Mills paused at the door. "Good luck with the move," she said. "And the house. That is a big accomplishment." "Thanks," I managed to say. Officer Carver lingered on the threshold. The blue and red lights were still swirling behind him, but they felt less threatening now. He looked at me with a gaze that was heavy with experience. He had seen domestic disputes. He had seen battered wives and controlled children. He knew the look of a victim, even when she was standing in a clean apartment wearing a realtor t-shirt. "Ms. Hamilton," Carver said, "a word of advice?" "Yes." "If they call again, we have to come out again. We have to check. That is the law. But if this becomes a pattern, if they keep using emergency services to force contact with you when you have made it clear you want to be left alone." He paused, weighing his words. "That is harassment. Filing a false police report is a crime. And abuse is not always someone hitting you. Sometimes it is someone trying to make you think you are crazy so they can control you. You have the right to file a report against them if this continues." The words hung in the air between us. Abuse is not always someone hitting you. I had never used that word before. I had called them demanding. I had called them selfish. I had called them toxic. But I had never called it abuse. Abuse was bruises. Abuse was shouting. Abuse was not a mother asking for help or a father signing a permission slip. But as I looked at the police officer standing in my doorway, sent there by the people who were supposed to love me, I realized he was right. They had tried to strip me of my credibility. They had tried to have me committed, or at least humiliated enough to break, just because I closed the bank of Page. "I understand," I said softly. "Thank you, officer." "Lock the door," he said. He stepped out, and I closed the door. I threw the deadbolt. Click. I slid the chain back into place. Clack. I walked to the window and peered through the blinds. I watched them get back into their cruiser. The lights cut out, plunging the street back into darkness. The engine rumbled, and the car drove away slowly, disappearing around the corner. I was alone again. I walked back to the kitchen. The microwave beeped again, a reminder of the dinner I had forgotten. I looked at the pizza, but I was not hungry anymore. I looked at the laptop screen. Abuse. Officer Carver had given me a name for it, and by giving it a name, he had given me permission to fight it. I was not just a daughter being difficult, I was a victim being targeted. I closed my laptop. I did not send the email to the client. Instead, I walked over to the counter where I kept my purse. I dug out my wallet and pulled out my driver's license. I looked at it. Paige Hamilton, new homeowner, sane person. Then, a thought struck me. A cold, sharp realization that made the hair on my arms stand up. If they were willing to send the police to my door to get $40,000, what else had they done? If they were this desperate, this entitled to my resources, where did the boundary actually end? I remembered the mail I had seen at my parents' house a few months ago, a credit card offer addressed to me that Mom had quickly swept into a drawer, saying it was junk mail. I remembered how Dad always insisted on handling the tax documents when I was in college, because he knew a guy. My heart started to race again, but this time it was not panic, it was suspicion. I unlocked my phone. I did not go to my texts. I did not go to my calls. I opened the App Store. I typed in the name of a credit monitoring service, one of the paid ones, the ones that dug deep. I downloaded it. I entered my social security number. I entered my old address. I entered my new address. The loading circle spun in the center of the screen, verifying identity, retrieving data. I stood there in the dark kitchen, the light of the phone illuminating my face. One last time, Mom had said, Officer Carver said, if this becomes a pattern. I had a feeling the pattern was already woven into the fabric of my financial life, and I had just been too busy being the good daughter to see the stitches. The screen flashed, report ready. I took a breath, and I tapped the button. It was time to see what else the Ellison family had been doing in my name. The loading wheel on the credit monitoring app continued to spin, a hypnotic blue circle in the center of my phone screen. Verifying. Verifying. While the digital world tried to piece together my financial reality, my mind drifted backward, pulled by the gravity of the police visit. Officer Carver had called it a pattern, but it was not just a pattern, it was an architecture, a structure built slowly, brick by brick, over nearly 15 years. I closed my eyes and the smell hit me first. It was not the smell of fresh paint or the crisp scent of closing documents. It was the smell of industrial rubber, stale coffee, and that gritty, orange pumice soap mechanics used to scrub grease from their knuckles. Riverline Auto Parts. I was 16 years old, while other girls in my sophomore class were worrying about prom dates or saving up for concert tickets. I was standing behind a formidable metal counter, wearing a polo shirt that was 2 sizes too big for my teenage frame. My job was to fetch alternators and brake pads for impatient men with dirt under their fingernails. I remembered the ache in my heels. It was a specific kind of pain, a throbbing heat that started in the soles of my feet around hour 4 and crawled up my shins by hour 8. I worked Tuesdays, Thursdays, and double shifts on Saturdays. I remembered the sound of the dot matrix printer spitting out my paycheck every 2 weeks. It was a pitiful sound. But to me, it sounded like freedom. Or at least, I thought it was freedom until I got home. The routine was always the same. I would walk through the front door of our split-level house in Fairview, tired and smelling like motor oil. Mom would be in the kitchen, usually looking over a stack of bills with a furrowed brow that smoothed out instantly when she saw the envelope in my hand. "Oh, thank goodness," she would say, not looking at my face, but at my hand. "Hand it here, honey. I will deposit it for you." I wanted to keep $50 this time. I remembered saying once, just once, "My winter coat has a rip in the lining, and the wind goes right through it." Mom had sighed, the long, heavy sigh of a martyr. "Paige, we talked about this. Derek needs that baseball camp. If he does not go, the scouts won't see him. Do you want your brother to miss his shot at a scholarship just because you are cold for a few minutes waiting for the bus? You are young. You don't have real expenses. We are a team, remember? We are a team." That was the slogan. But on this team, I was the equipment manager, and Derek was the star quarterback. My paycheck went into the family pot. 2 days later, Derek walked out of the house with a brand new duffel bag and a pair of cleats that cost more than I made in a month. He went to the camp. He came back with a tan and stories about how the coach was a jerk who didn't appreciate his style. I fixed my coat with duct tape. I bought my school notebooks from the clearance bin, the ones with the torn covers. I ate the free shift meal at work, usually a vending machine sandwich, so I wouldn't have to ask for lunch money. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was building character. Then came the SATs. I was 17. I had a grade point average that I had fought for, tooth and nail. I wanted to go to a real university, maybe even out of state. I wanted to study business. I found a prep course that guaranteed a score improvement. It cost $300. I pitched it to my father, Ray, like a business proposal. I sat him down at the dining table. I showed him my grades. I showed him the brochure. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling with hope, "if I get a high score, I could get a merit scholarship. It will save us thousands in the long run. I just need $300 for the class." Dad looked at the brochure. Then he looked at the ceiling. Then he looked at his watch. "We just don't have it, kiddo," he said, shaking his head. "Things are tight at the plant. The heating bill was murder this month. You are smart. Just buy a book and study at the library. You don't need a fancy class." I was disappointed, but I accepted it. Things are tight. I told myself, we are poor. It is not their fault. 1 week later, exactly 7 days, I came home from school to find a car sitting in the driveway. It was a used Honda Civic, metallic blue, with a spoiler on the back. It wasn't new, but it was clean, and it had alloy wheels. Derek was sitting in the driver's seat, revving the engine. Dad was standing next to the window, beaming with pride. "What is this?" I asked, dropping my backpack on the lawn. "Derek's wheels," Dad announced, patting the roof of the car. He has been feeling really down about having to ask for rides. A man needs his independence. Paige, he cannot be showing up to dates in his mom's minivan. It looks bad. We need him to project success. "But," I felt the words choke me, "you said we didn't have money. The SAT class was $300. This car is..." How much? It is a financing deal, Dad said dismissively. Low monthly payments. Do not count pennies. Paige, this is an investment in your brother's confidence. That was the moment the glass cracked. $300 for my future was an expense. $3,000 for Derek's ego was an investment. I didn't take the class. I bought a used book from a thrift store that was 2 years out of date. I studied until my eyes burned. I got into community college, not the big university, because I couldn't afford the application fees for the others. By 18, the dynamic had hardened into concrete. I worked days at a call center and took night classes. I was exhausted all the time. My eyes had permanent dark circles. But every Friday, I transferred a portion of my check to Mom. To keep the house, she would say. The bank is breathing down our necks. Paige, if we lose the house, where will Derek live? Derek had dropped out of his first college by then. He was taking a gap year to focus on his gaming career. He needed high-speed internet, which I paid for. He needed an ergonomic chair for his back, which Dad bought him. I remembered sitting in the back of a lecture hall, listening to a professor talk about microeconomics, about supply and demand, and I realized my family had their own economic model. I was the supply. Derek was the demand. I spent my early 20s waiting for the thank you. I thought that if I just worked hard enough, if I sacrificed enough, if I saved them from enough financial cliffs, eventually they would look at me and say, Paige, you saved us. We are so proud. It is your turn now. I thought I was buying love. I thought I was purchasing my ticket into the inner circle of the family. But inflation is a killer. The price of their love kept going up. When I got my license and started making real commissions at Blue Harbor Realty, I took the family out to dinner to celebrate. I ordered champagne. I was glowing. I made $10,000 this month, I whispered to Dad, wanting him to be impressed, wanting him to look at me the way he looked at Derek when Derek won a level in a video game. Dad didn't smile. He didn't toast me. He leaned in, his face serious. That is great, honey, really great. Listen, since you are flush, Derek is in a bit of a jam with his rent. He is trying to launch that t-shirt business, and capital is tight. Could you send him $2,000? It would really take the pressure off him. My smile died on my lips. It wasn't a celebration. It was a notification of available funds. I looked down at my champagne glass. The bubbles were rising to the top, bursting and disappearing, just like my hopes. That was the reality I had lived in for 15 years. They had trained me like a dog. Work hard. Bring the stick back. Drop it at their feet. But instead of a treat, I just got told to go fetch a bigger stick. I stood there in my dark kitchen, the memory of that dinner tasting bitter in my mouth. I had spent my youth hunching over in auto parts stores, squinting at textbooks under dim lights, and eating ramen noodles so that Derek could have the newest iPhone and the illusion of success. I had caved in my own foundation to build a pedestal for him. And what did I get for it? A police wellness check, an accusation of insanity. The loading circle on my phone screen stopped spinning. The screen flashed green, then settled into a stark white page filled with numbers and text. Report generated. I looked down. I had thought I knew the extent of what I had given them. I thought I had given them my youth, my labor, and my cash. But as my eyes scanned the list of open accounts on the screen, I realized I was wrong. I hadn't just given them my past. They had been actively stealing my future. There, glowing in the pixelated light, was a list of debts I had never signed for, a history of transactions I had never made. The sadness of the flashbacks evaporated instantly. The smell of the auto parts store vanished. The phantom pain in my feet was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was a host organism, and the parasites had been feeding for a long, long time. I tapped the screen to open the details of the first unknown loan. It was time to see exactly how much Derek's confidence had cost me. The credit monitoring app on my phone was a sleek, dark blue interface designed to make you feel secure. I had downloaded it initially just to make sure the hard inquiry from my mortgage lender had fallen off, or at least to see where my score had settled after the biggest purchase of my life. My thumb hovered over the biometric login. I was expecting to see a number somewhere in the 700s, a slight dip, maybe a notification about my new address update. I was not expecting to see a bright red exclamation point pulsing at the top of the dashboard. New account alert. My breath hitched in my throat. I tapped the notification, my fingers cold and clumsy. The screen refreshed, and the blood drained from my face so fast I felt dizzy. Lakeshore Community Bank, auto loan, opened October 14th. Original balance, $55,000. $55,000. I stared at the number. It was not $40,000. The amount Mom had demanded via text. It was significantly more. It was the price of a fully loaded sports package, plus taxes, plus dealer fees, plus whatever back-end warranties a Shark salesperson could tack on. I tapped the arrow to expand the details. Primary borrower, Paige Marie Hamilton. Co-borrower, Ray Edward Ellison. Address, 42 Oak Street, Fairview, New York. The room seemed to tilt. 42 Oak Street was my parents' house. I had not lived there in 7 years, and Ray Ellison, my father, was listed as the cosigner. But usually, a cosigner is there to help the primary borrower qualify. In this case, it looked like I was the one anchoring the loan, and he was just there. I looked at the date again, October 14th. I closed my eyes, accessing the mental calendar I kept for work. October 14th was a Thursday. I opened my laptop, ignoring the half-written email to my client, and pulled up my digital calendar. October 14th, 9 o'clock a.m., home inspection on Highland Avenue. 1 o'clock p.m., client lunch with the Millers. 3:30 p.m., final walkthrough on the duplex. I had been working a 12-hour day. I had been on the other side of the county. I had sent 20 emails that day. I had GPS logs from my mileage tracker app. I had never stepped foot inside a Lakeshore Community Bank. I did not scream. I did not cry. The reaction was visceral. Biological fear mixed with a sudden, sharp clarity. This was not a mistake. This was a robbery. And the burglars had keys to the house because I had given them birth. I hit the contact button on the app for Lakeshore Community Bank. It was late, past business hours. But banks like that always had a 24-hour fraud line. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. "Thank you for calling Lakeshore Community Bank," a robotic voice chirped. "For lost or stolen cards, press 1. For suspected fraud, press 2. I pressed 2 so hard I almost cracked my screen. "Please hold for the next available representative." The hold music was a terrible, tinny jazz saxophone loop. I paced the length of my small kitchen. $55,000. If this stuck, my debt-to-income ratio would explode. My mortgage could be flagged for post-closing audit. If Blue Harbor Realty ran a background check for my annual license renewal, I would look like I was leveraged to the hilt. This could cost me my career. "Fraud Department, this is Marcus. Can I get your full name?" "Paige Hamilton," I said. My voice sounded foreign to me. Low, fast, and devoid of any warmth. "I am looking at my credit report. There is a $55,000 auto loan opened in my name at your bank on October 14th. I did not open this loan. I do not have this car. I have never been to your bank." There was a typing sound on the other end. "Okay, Ms. Hamilton, let me pull that up. Can you verify your social for me?" I gave him the number. It felt sickening to say it out loud, knowing someone else had already used it. "Okay," Marcus said, his voice slowing down. "I see the account here. It is for a new model sedan. The loan was originated at our Fairview branch. The vehicle was picked up the same day." "I was not in Fairview on October 14th, I said, struggling to keep the hysteria out of my voice. "I was working in Rochester. I can prove it. I have location data. I have witnesses." "I see a cosigner here," Marcus said. "Ray Ellison. Is that your father?" "Yes," I said. "But I did not sign with him. Marcus, you need to freeze this account immediately. Do not release any more funds. Do not send the title. This is identity theft." Ms. Hamilton, Marcus said, and his tone shifted from professional to cautious. The notes here from the loan officer say that the borrowers came in together. Well, mostly, the notes say. Let me read this. Mr. Ellison provided all income documentation and identification for primary borrower. Daughter works in real estate. Very busy. Came in briefly to sign in the parking lot due to schedule conflict. It says the loan officer verified ID. I stopped pacing. I stood frozen by the refrigerator. Verified ID? How? I have my ID in my wallet right now. I have had it for 4 years. They have a photocopy on file, Marcus said. It looks like, well, it is a bit grainy. It is a scan of a photocopy. Read the expiration date on that ID. Marcus, I demanded. There was a pause. It expired 2 years ago, but the system note says, client is waiting on renewal in mail. My knees gave out. I sank onto one of the kitchen chairs. I remembered, junior year of college. I had come home for Thanksgiving and lost my wallet. We turned the house upside down looking for it. Dad was the one who helped me look the hardest. He checked under the sofa cushions, in the car, everywhere. We never found it. I had to go to the DMV the next day and get a replacement. He had found it. He must have found it. And he had kept it. He had kept my driver's license in a drawer for 5 years, waiting for a day when he needed a prop for his theater of lies. That license was stolen 5 years ago, I whispered. Marcus, that is not me. You accepted an expired, stolen ID from a third party. Ms. Hamilton, we take these allegations very seriously, Marcus said, sounding a bit nervous now. I am going to open a fraud claim, case number 4492. I am going to restrict the account. I want to see the documents, I said. I want to see the signature. I can secure email you a copy of the promissory note for verification purposes, he said. If you claim it is not your signature, we need you to sign an affidavit. Send it, I said. Send it now. We stayed on the line while my email refreshed. Ping. Subject: Secure message from Lakeshore Community Bank. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF. My hands were trembling so bad I could hardly navigate the trackpad. I scrolled past the dense legal text, past the interest rate, 7.5%, which was atrocious for someone with my credit score, down to the signature line. And there it was. Paige Marie Hamilton. I stared at it. It was written in blue ink. My signature is sharp, angular, a jagged P, a quick loop for the H. It is the signature of a woman who signs contracts for a living, efficient and professional. The signature on the screen was round. The loops were fat and lazy. The I was dotted with a heavy, deliberate point. It was not my handwriting, but I recognized it. It was the handwriting of a man trying to write like a girl. It was the same handwriting that used to sign my report cards when I got a bad grade and didn't want Mom to see. It was the handwriting of a man who used to forge sick notes so I could stay home and help him clean the garage. It was Dad's hand. And right below it, on the cosigner line, was his real signature. Ray E. Ellison, bold, arrogant, unashamed. He had sat in that bank, looked a loan officer in the eye, probably someone he knew, someone from the Old Boys Club in Fairview, and forged my name. He had handed over my Social Security number, which he probably had memorized from years of claiming me as a dependent. He had used an expired ID that he had stolen from his own daughter, and he had done it on October 14th, 3 days before I closed on my house. He knew I was buying a house. He knew my credit was about to be locked down or scrutinized, so he got in right under the wire. He maxed out my capacity before I could even claim it for myself. Ms. Hamilton? Marcus asked. Did you receive the file? I got it, I said. My voice was ice. That is not my signature. That is a forgery, and it is a bad one. Your loan officer should be fired for accepting this. Okay, Marcus said. I am marking the account as fraud. We will launch an investigation. But Ms. Hamilton, since the cosigner is a family member, usually we advise that you file a police report. Without a police report, it is often considered a familial dispute, and it is harder to remove from your credit bureau. A police report, I repeated. I looked at the front door where Officer Carver had stood less than an hour ago. If this becomes a pattern, he had said, they had sent the police to my door to scare me, to make me look unstable, to discredit me in advance. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together with the terrifying precision of a bear trap snapping shut. The wellness check wasn't just about the $40,000, it was a preemptive strike. If I found out about the $55,000 loan and tried to report it, they could say, "Oh, poor Paige. She's having a breakdown. She is imagining things. She is paranoid. Look, we even had to call the police on her last week because she was acting crazy." They were building a narrative where I was the lunatic, and they were the concerned parents trying to manage my affairs. "Ms. Hamilton?" "I will file the report," I said. "I will file it tomorrow morning. Freeze the account. Marcus, if one penny moves out of that bank, I am suing you for negligence." I hung up the phone. I stood in the silence of my apartment. The envelope from Blue Harbor Realty was still on the counter. "Congratulations." I walked over to the window and looked out at the dark street. I felt cold, a bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I had always thought my family was just bad with money. I thought they were selfish, entitled, maybe a little bit narcissistic. I thought they were just a heavy backpack I had to carry. But looking at that forged signature, looking at the date, realizing they had hoarded my old ID like a sleeper agent keeping a cyanide pill, I realized the truth. They weren't just a burden, they were predators. And I was the prey they had been fattening up for 30 years. I turned away from the window. I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a fresh notepad. I grabbed a pen. I didn't cry. I didn't shake anymore. I sat down and wrote, Step 1, police report. Step 2, lawyer. I had spent my whole life trying to be the perfect daughter, trying to earn their love. Tonight, that daughter died, and the woman who took her place was going to make sure that Ray and Linda Ellison learned the hard way that you never, ever steal from a real estate agent who knows how to read the fine print. I sat at my kitchen island, the cold light of my laptop screen illuminating the dark apartment. The emotional hangover from the police visit and the discovery of the loan was still throbbing behind my eyes. But I pushed it aside. Emotions were for victims. Strategy was for survivors. I was not going to scream at them. I was not going to send a long, angry text message that they could screenshot and show to their friends as proof of my instability. I was going to dismantle them, piece by piece, using the one language they had never bothered to learn, the law. I opened a new tab and typed New York State Recording Laws, wiretapping consent into the search bar. I needed to know the rules of engagement before I fired a single shot. I scanned the legal text, my eyes darting over terms like felony and admissibility, and then I found it. New York is a one-party consent state. This meant that as long as one person in the conversation consents to the recording, that person being me, I did not have to tell the other party. I could record everything. I could capture every lie, every admission, every arrogant justification, and it would be perfectly legal in a court of law. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Green light. I picked up my phone. I downloaded a high-rated voice recording app, one that synced automatically to the cloud. I opened it and renamed the default New Recording 1 to Derek Carlone Proof. The title stared back at me. It was not just a file name. It was a mission statement. I needed a confession. The bank documents were strong, but a forgery claim could turn into a he said, she said battle if Dad got a lawyer who argued I had given verbal permission. I needed him to say it. I needed him to own it. But Ray Ellison was slippery. If I went in aggressive, he would clam up or hang up. He would play the victim. To catch him, I had to play the role he wanted me to play. The confused, overwhelmed, slightly submissive daughter who just wanted to understand why things were happening. I had to be the Paige of yesterday to protect the Paige of tomorrow. I practiced my tone in the empty kitchen. Dad, I don't understand. Too whiny. Dad, about the loan. Too direct. I cleared my throat. I slumped my shoulders. physically inhabiting the posture of defeat. "Dad, I saw the statement. I just want to fix it." Perfect. I hit the record button. The timer started counting up. 0001. I dialed his number. It rang 3 times. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my hand holding the phone was rock steady. "Yeah?" He answered on the 4th ring. His voice was gruff, defensive. He was expecting a fight. He was probably sitting in his recliner, the television blaring in the background. "Hi, Dad," I said, letting my voice wobble just enough. "It is Paige." "I figured," he grunted. "Your mother is still crying. You know, you really upset her with that police nonsense. We were just trying to help you." "I know," I lied. The bile rose in my throat, but I swallowed it. "I know you guys worry. Look, Dad, I am not calling to fight. I am looking at my credit report. I saw the loan for the car, for the $55,000. "Oh, that," he said. The tension in his voice dropped instantly. He sounded relieved that I wasn't screaming. He sounded confident. "Yeah, well, we had to move fast on that. Paige, the deal on the car was expiring. We couldn't wait for you to stop playing hard to get." "But Dad," I said, pitching my voice to sound small and confused. "The bank said I was there. They said I signed it. But I was at work. I don't understand how the paperwork went through without me." "Don't worry about the technicalities, honey," he said, his tone dismissive, like he was explaining how a toaster worked to a toddler. "It is just paperwork. You have the credit score. You have the 740 score. Paige, Derek is sitting at a 500. If we put it in his name, the interest would have been double. We are a family. We optimize. You have the name, so we use the name. It is smart business." "But the signature," I pressed gently. "It looks like my name, but I didn't write it. Did Mom sign it?" "No, I did," he said. The admission was casual, arrogant. "I just signed it for you. I know how you do your P. It is not a big deal. Paige, I am your father. I have signed permission slips for you your whole life. This is just another permission slip to help your brother get back on his feet." I glanced at the recording timer. 1 minute, 45 seconds. I had the confession. He admitted he signed it, but I needed the nail in the coffin. I needed to destroy the ID defense. "The bank said they checked my ID," I said. "I have my driver's license here in my wallet. How did you show them my ID if I wasn't there?" He laughed, a short bark of a laugh. "You really think I am an amateur, don't you? I kept your old one, the one you lost back in college. You remember? You were panicking about it. I found it under the seat of the car a week later. I figured, hey, better to hold on to this just in case. You never know when you might need a backup. See? Your old dad is always looking out for you." I closed my eyes. The betrayal was absolute. He hadn't kept it to protect me. He had kept it as a spare key to my identity. "So you used the expired license?" I asked, cementing the fact for the recording. "The teller didn't look at the date," he bragged. "I chatted him up, told him about Derek's business ventures. People trust me. Paige, that is how the world works. It is about relationships, not expiration dates." "Okay," I said. "Okay, I understand now. So the $55,000 is entirely in my name?" "And mine," he corrected quickly. "I am on there. But look, Derek is going to make the payments. Once his crypto thing takes off, or he gets this sales job, he will refinance it. You won't even notice it is there. Just don't go closing it or reporting it. All right? That would really screw your brother over. And we don't want any more drama with the cops, do we?" "No," I said softly. "No more drama." "Good girl," he said. "I knew you would come around. We will see you at Thanksgiving." "Goodbye, Dad," I said. I pulled the phone away and hit the red stop button. Recording saved. Derek Carr Loan Proof, M4A. Length, 3 minutes, 12 seconds. I stared at the file. It was a small digital packet, just a few megabytes of data. But it weighed more than the house I had just bought. He had admitted to forgery. He had admitted to identity theft. He had admitted to premeditated fraud involving a stolen document. And he had done it all while patting himself on the back for being a smart businessman. I did not feel triumphant. I felt sick. Good girl. He had called me. The same thing you say to a dog that stops barking when you command it. I immediately went into secure mode. I uploaded the file to my Google Drive. Then I uploaded it to Dropbox. Then I emailed it to myself at a separate, secure email address I used only for real estate contracts. Then, I walked to my bedroom and opened the small, fireproof safe I had bought for the new house deeds. I took out a fresh USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, copied the audio file and the PDF of the forged contract onto it. I ejected the drive, capped it, and placed it inside the safe. I spun the dial. Click, 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 locked. I had the confession. Now I needed the visual confirmation. The next morning, I did not go to the office. I called Maddie and told her I had a family emergency, which was technically the truth, just not the kind she would expect. I drove to the Fairview branch of Lakeshore Community Bank. I did not drive my sedan. I rented a car for the day, a generic gray compact, because I did not want anyone recognizing my vehicle in the parking lot. This was a stealth mission. I walked into the bank at 10 in the morning. It was a quiet branch, with dated carpet and a smell of stale popcorn. I was wearing my sharpest blazer, my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I carried a leather portfolio. I did not look like Ray Ellison's daughter. I looked like an auditor. I walked straight to the manager's office. The nameplate on the door said, Mr. Sterling. I knocked and entered without waiting for a full invitation. Mr. Sterling, I said, extending my hand before he could even stand up. My name is Paige Hamilton. I spoke to your fraud department last night regarding case number 4492. I am here to formally submit my affidavit of forgery, and I am here to request the preservation of security footage. Mr. Sterling was a middle-aged man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He blinked at me, surprised by my intensity. Ms. Hamilton? Ah, yes. Marcus sent over a note. Please, sit down. I sat. I placed my portfolio on his desk. I pulled out the printed email regarding the fraud claim. Mr. Sterling. On October 14th, a loan was originated here for $55,000 in my name. I stated clearly. My father, Ray Ellison, was present. I was not. He has admitted to me, on a recorded line, that he forged my signature and used an expired identification card that he stole from me 5 years ago. Mr. Sterling's face went pale. Recorded line? Yes, I said. New York is a one-party consent state. I have the audio, I have the transcript, but that is for the police. What I need from you, right now, is confirmation that you are preserving the lobby and desk camera footage from October 14th between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. He shifted in his chair. Ms. Hamilton, we generally only release footage to law enforcement with a subpoena. I know, I cut him off. I am not asking you to give it to me. I am asking you to preserve it. If that footage is deleted, or taped over, or lost in the routine cycle, Lakeshore Community Bank will be facing a lawsuit for spoliation of evidence in addition to the negligence suit for accepting a stolen, expired ID. I leaned forward. I work in contracts. Mr. Sterling, I know that your loan officer bypassed the Patriot Act requirements for customer identification. I know that because I wasn't here. So, unless you want your branch to be the center of a federal banking compliance investigation, I suggest you type an email to your security team right now and ensure that footage is locked down permanently. Mr. Sterling stared at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw the absolute, unwavering certainty of a woman who had nothing left to lose because her family had already taken it all. I will do it right now, he whispered. He turned to his keyboard and began to type furiously. I watched him. I watched the keystrokes that were sealing the exits for my father. Ray Ellison had thought he was playing a game of checkers with a child. He didn't realize that for the last 10 years, while he was playing games, I had been learning how to checkmate. Done, Mr. Sterling said, looking up. The footage is flagged for permanent retention. Thank you, I said. I stood up. The police will be in touch with your legal department. I walked out of the bank. The sun was shining outside, bright and harsh. I put on my sunglasses. I had the recording. I had the footage secured. I had the documents. I sat in the rental car and gripped the steering wheel. My hands were not shaking. Step 1 was complete. I had the ammunition. Now, it was time to invite the targets to a meeting they thought was a surrender, but was actually an ambush. I picked up my phone and texted my mother. "Mom, Dad explains everything. I understand now. Let's meet. I want to clear this up before Thanksgiving." It took 3 seconds for the reply to come through. "Thank God you came to your senses. We love you, honey." I stared at the words, "We love you." They looked like a threat. "I know," I whispered. "That is the problem." I put the car in gear and drove away. The trap was set, and they were walking right into it, smiling all the way. The parking lot of Northline Motors was an expanse of fresh asphalt and aggressive capitalism. Rows of polished vehicles sat under the afternoon sun, their windshields displaying neon numbers promising low interest rates and zero down payments. It was the kind of place that smelled of tire rubber and desperation masked by cologne. I parked my rental car 3 rows back, away from the main showroom glass. I wanted to watch them arrive. I wanted to see the exact moment they thought they had won. I checked my watch. It was 4 o'clock on the dot. I didn't have to wait long. My parents' beige SUV pulled in 2 minutes later, parking crookedly next to a gleaming sapphire blue sports sedan, the car that was supposedly mine. The doors opened, and out they stepped. It was a masterclass in delusion. My father, Ray, smoothed down his windbreaker with the swagger of a man who had successfully closed a deal. My mother, Linda, adjusted her hair in the side mirror, her face set in a mask of benevolent forgiveness. And then there was Derek. My brother stepped out of the back seat like he was exiting a private jet. He was wearing a designer hoodie that I knew cost $300, likely paid for by a credit card in my name I hadn't found yet, and oversized aviator sunglasses. He walked around the blue car, running his hand along the fender possessively. He didn't look like a man in debt. He looked like a lottery winner waiting to collect his giant check. I took a deep breath. On the passenger seat beside me sat a thick manila envelope. Inside was the trinity of their destruction: the bank loan documents, the affidavit of forgery I had drafted but not yet filed, and a printout of the transcript from our phone call. In my pocket, my phone was queued up to the audio file, Derek Carlone proof. "Showtime," I whispered. I grabbed the envelope and stepped out into the heat. I walked toward them, my heels clicking a steady, martial rhythm on the pavement. They spotted me when I was about 20 feet away. "Paige," Mom called out, opening her arms. Her voice was syrupy sweet, loud enough for any passing salesman to hear. "Oh, honey, I am so glad you could make it. We were so worried about you." She tried to hug me, but I stopped just out of reach, using the envelope as a subtle shield between us. "Hi, Mom," I said. I didn't smile. "You look tired," she said, her eyes scanning my face for weakness. "The house stress, right?" "I told your father. Moving is one of the most stressful life events, but we are here to help fix everything." Dad walked over, clapping his hands together. All right, let's not get emotional. We are here for business. I spoke to the finance guy inside. Paige, since you are here, we can just do a quick re-sign on a couple of forms to optimize the interest rate, and then Derek can take the keys. Easy peasy." Derek leaned against the blue car, crossing his arms. He didn't even take off his sunglasses. "Took you long enough. Paige, I have been Ubering for a week. Do you know how embarrassing that is?" "Embarrassing," I repeated flatly. "Yes, I can imagine." "So," Dad said, reaching for the envelope in my hand, "is that the paperwork? Did you bring the income stubs?" I pulled the envelope back. Not exactly. I walked past them and stood directly in front of the sapphire blue sedan. It was an aggressive car, all sharp angles and unnecessary vents. It was a $55,000 toy for a boy who had never worked a 40-hour week in his life. "I want to talk about the signing," I said, placing the heavy envelope on the warm hood of the car. What is there to talk about? Derek groaned. God, why do you always have to make everything a lecture? Just sign the thing so I can go. I am not signing anything, Derek, I said. Dad frowned, his brow furrowing. Paige, we discussed this. Don't start having an episode again. We are in public. He was right. We were in public, but not in the way he thought. About 15 feet away from us, near a row of electric SUVs, a young saleswoman was filming something. She had a ring light attached to a stabilizer gimbal and was holding a phone up at eye level. She was talking rapidly, doing that high-energy bounce that influencers do. Hey guys, welcome back to the lot. Today we are looking at the new inventory drop. She was just background noise to them. To me, she was a variable. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the loan application. I smoothed it out on the blue metal of the hood. I went to the bank yesterday, I said. My voice was calm, projecting just enough to cut through the outdoor breeze. I saw the original application, the one dated October 14th. I pointed to the signature line. Whose hand is that, Dad? I asked. Ray stiffened. He looked at the paper, then at me, then around the parking lot. Paige, put that away. We don't need to air our laundry out here. Is that my signature? I asked, louder this time. It represents you, he hissed, stepping closer, trying to use his physical bulk to intimidate me. I told you on the phone. I acted as your agent. It is standard family business. Stop acting like a lawyer. It is not family business, I said. It is forgery, and you used a stolen ID to do it. I pulled out the photocopy of the expired license, the grainy, black and white image the bank had sent me. I slapped it down next to the contract. You kept my lost license for 5 years. Dad, you waited until I had good credit, and then you stole $55,000 of borrowing power from me. Stole? Mom shrieked. The sweetness was gone, replaced by the shrill defense mechanism I knew so well. How dare you use that word? We raised you. We fed you. This car is for your brother. Helping your brother is not stealing. It is when you fake my name because you know I would have said no, I countered. You are being hysterical, Derek spat, pushing off the car. He took off his glasses, his eyes narrowing. You are jealous. That is what this is. You bought your little house, and you can't stand that I am getting something nice too. You want me to fail. I don't care if you fail, Derek, I said. I just refuse to pay for it anymore. Lower your voice, Dad commanded. His face was turning a mottled red. You are making a scene. People are looking. He was right. A couple browsing a minivan a few cars down had stopped to watch. And the saleswoman with the ring light? She had stopped talking about electric SUVs. She had turned slightly. Her phone was now pointed in our direction. You want me to lower my voice? I asked. Okay, I will let you speak for yourself. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I tapped the screen. I turned the volume all the way up. Click. My father's voice, recorded just 24 hours ago, blasted from the speakers. In the quiet of the parking lot, it sounded incredibly loud. I just signed it for you. I know how you do your P. It is not a big deal. Paige, I kept your old one, the one you lost back in college. I figured, hey, better to hold on to this just in case. The color drained from Ray Ellison's face so fast, he looked like a corpse standing upright. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Derek looked at the phone, then at Dad, confusion warring with anger. I let it play. The teller didn't look at the date. I chatted him up. People trust me. Paige. I hit pause. The silence that followed was heavier than the humid air. You recorded me? Dad whispered. The betrayal in his voice was genuine. He truly believed he was the victim here. You entrapped your own father? I protected myself, I said. You admitted to a felony. Dad, identity theft, forgery, bank fraud. It is not fraud, Mom shouted. Losing control? She stomped her foot. It is family. We are family. You can't record your family. Actually, in New York, I can I said coolly. Hey! The voice came from the side. We all turned. The saleswoman with the gimbal had walked over. She wasn't filming the cars anymore. She was filming us. And she wasn't just recording. She was live. Wait, the girl said, looking at her screen and then at us. Did he just admit to signing a $55,000 loan in her name without her knowing? Chat, are you hearing this? She looked at me, her eyes wide with the thrill of viral content. Ma'am, is this your car? Did they steal your identity? Get that camera out of my face! Derek lunged toward the girl. Derek, stop! Mom screamed. But Derek was angry. His toy was being threatened. He swiped at the girl's phone. She pulled back deftly. She was young and quick. Don't touch me, the saleswoman yelled. I am on shift. You touch me. I call security. He is harassing us, Mom yelled at the girl, trying to spin the narrative instantly. This is a private family dispute. My daughter she is having a breakdown. She is off her meds. Lady, I just heard the recording, the saleswoman shot back. She looked at her phone screen. And so did 300 people. The comments are going crazy. Someone just said, that is definitely the dad from the recording. 300 people? Dad croaked. He looked around wildly, as if he could see the invisible audience judging him. Turn it off, Mom pleaded. Turning to me now, she grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Paige, tell her to turn it off. Tell her you are lying. You are ruining your father's reputation. Do you know who he is in this town? I looked at my mother's hand on my arm. I looked at the fear in her eyes. It wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of exposure. I gently but firmly peeled her fingers off my blazer. I am not lying, Mom, I said, and I am not stopping anything. You guys started this. You forged the signature. You called the police on me. You wanted a spectacle? You got one. Paige, please, Dad said. His voice was shaking. We can fix this. We can go inside, tear up the contract. Just make it stop. I can't tear up a contract that has already been funded. Dad, I said. The bank knows. The fraud department knows. And now? I gestured to the girl with the phone, who was currently narrating the scene to her growing audience. The brother is literally trying to fight me right now. Guys. Now everybody knows. You little witch, Derek snarled. He stepped toward me, his fists clenched. You planned this. You wanted to humiliate us. I wanted to be left alone, I shouted back, my composure cracking for just a second. I wanted to buy my house and live my life. You are the ones who wouldn't let go. You are the ones who needed $40,000, then $55,000. Is that true? A man asked. It was the customer who had been looking at the minivan. He had walked over, phone in hand, recording as well. They took $50,000 in your name? Yes, I said to the stranger. That is messed up, the man said, shaking his head at Dad. To your own kid? Mind your own business, Dad roared at the stranger. The scene was spiraling. More dealership employees were coming out of the glass doors, looking concerned. The live stream girl was still broadcasting. I looked at the chaos. My family, the polished, perfect unit they pretended to be, was disintegrating in a parking lot, undone by their own greed and a TikTok live stream. I reached out and picked up the documents from the hood of the car. I am leaving now, I said. You can't leave, Mom cried. She was crying real tears now, black streaks of mascara running down her face. Paige, you can't leave us like this. They are going to arrest him. If this gets out, he will lose his pension. He will lose everything. He should have thought of that before he practiced my signature, I said. I turned my back on them. Paige, Dad yelled. It was a command. The old command. The one that used to make me freeze and obey. I didn't break stride. Paige, Derek screamed. You selfish bitch! Come back here! I kept walking. I could hear the saleswoman's voice fading behind me. She is walking away, guys. That was insane. Moral of the story, check your credit report. I got into my rental car. My hands were trembling slightly now. the adrenaline crash beginning to hit. I locked the doors. Through the rearview mirror, I saw security guards approaching my family. I saw Derek arguing with them. I saw Dad holding his head in his hands. I put the car in reverse. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. It is a terrible thing to watch your origin story burn to the ground, even if you are the one holding the matches. But as I drove out of the lot, leaving the sapphire blue sedan and the wreckage of the Ellison family reputation behind, I took the deepest breath of my life. The truth was out, the lock was broken, and for the first time, the bill wasn't coming to me. The drive back from the dealership was a blur of white lines and asphalt, but by the time I walked through the door of my apartment, my mind was crystal clear. The confrontation in the parking lot had been messy, emotional, and loud, but the next phase of this war would be silent, precise, and fought entirely on paper. I sat down at my laptop. My hands were steady. I opened a new email draft addressed to the legal department of Lakeshore Community Bank, copying the branch manager, Mr. Sterling, and the fraud specialist, Marcus. Subject: Formal submission of evidence regarding fraudulent loan 88392. Paige Hamilton. I attached everything: the audio file of my father confessing to the forgery, the transcript I had typed out, the scan of the expired license, the affidavit stating I was not present at the signing. I typed a short message. Attached is irrefutable proof that the loan originated on October 14th, was obtained via identity theft and forgery. I expect immediate confirmation that this debt has been removed from my name and that Lakeshore Community Bank is taking appropriate action against the perpetrator. If I do not receive this confirmation within 24 hours, I will be filing a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Comptroller of the Currency. I hit send. The whoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox felt like the sound of a guillotine blade dropping. The response from Lakeshore was not immediate, but when it came the next morning, it was nuclear. Banks do not like to be embarrassed. They do not like liability. And most of all, they do not like being caught violating federal Know Your Customer laws. I received a call from a woman named Ms. Reynolds in their corporate legal division. Her voice was not the friendly, "how can I help you" tone of a teller. It was the sharp, clipped tone of a damage control expert. "Ms. Hamilton," she said, "we have reviewed the materials you submitted. We have also reviewed the security footage from the Fairview branch which you requested be preserved. We have determined that your presence cannot be verified on the date of signing." "I know," I said. "Lakeshore Community Bank is formally reclassifying you as a victim of fraud," she continued. "We are zeroing out the balance in your name. However, because the cosigner, Mr. Ray Ellison, is the party who presented the fraudulent documents, the bank is legally obligated to pursue the debt recovery through him. Furthermore, due to the nature of the documentation falsification, we are required to file a suspicious activity report with federal authorities." I closed my eyes for a second. Suspicious activity report. That was not just a slap on the wrist. That was the FBI's database. "Do what you have to do," I said. "I just want my name off it." "It is done," she said. "You will receive a letter of clearance in 3 business days." To ensure that letter stuck, I hired Elena Morales. Attorney Morales was a civil litigator with an office downtown that smelled of old leather and expensive cologne. She was a small woman with glasses that framed eyes that missed nothing. I sat in her office 2 days after the dealership incident, watching her read through my file. "This is textbook," Morales said, tapping the printout of the text messages my mother had sent. "But it is also messy. Familial fraud always is. They count on you not wanting to see your father in handcuffs." "I don't want to see him in handcuffs," I admitted, looking at the skyline of Rochester through her window. "But I don't want to be in chains anymore either." "We are going to draft a formal demand letter," Morales said. "We are asserting that you have no liability. We are also going to include a cease and desist regarding their attempts to extract money from you. If they contact you asking for money again, it becomes harassment." "They are going to hate this," I said. "Let them," Morales replied, clicking her pen. You are not their daughter right now. Paige, you are a plaintiff, and they are defendants. The sooner you treat it like a business transaction, the sooner it ends. She was right, but the defendants were not going down quietly. By Wednesday, my phone had become a war zone. I had 37 missed calls from my mother, 14 from my father, and a string of texts from Derek that ranged from incoherent rage to pathetic begging. I made the mistake of reading one of my mother's emails during my lunch break. Subject: How could you? Paige, your father is a wreck. The bank called him. They are talking about criminal charges. They are talking about seizing the car. How could you do this to us? We are your flesh and blood. You are ruining our reputation in this town. The neighbors are going to talk. Aunt Sarah is already asking why Derek's new car was towed away. You need to call the bank and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you gave verbal permission. Please, Paige, do not destroy your father over money. We can pay you back slowly. Just drop the case. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Ruining our reputation. Not, we are sorry we stole from you. Not, we are sorry we gaslit you. They were only sorry that the consequences had finally arrived at their doorstep. They wanted me to lie. They wanted me to commit perjury, to tell the bank I had given permission when I hadn't, just to save Dad from the mess he created. They were asking me to set myself on fire so they could stay warm one last time. I sat in my car, staring at the screen. A week ago, this email would have made me cry. It would have made me doubt myself. Now I just felt a cold, hard resolve. I opened my email app. I hit reply all. I added Attorney Morales to the CC line. I added Ms. Reynolds from the bank's legal team to the CC line. I typed, Mom, Dad, Derek. I am copying my attorney, Elena Morales, and the legal representative from Lakeshore Community Bank on this email. I will not retract my statement because my statement is the truth. I did not sign that loan. I did not authorize that loan. The audio recording and the security footage confirm this. Your request for me to lie to a financial institution to cover up a felony is noted and has been forwarded to my legal counsel. From this point forward, I am blocking your numbers. Do not come to my home. Do not come to my work. All future communication regarding this matter must be directed to Attorney Morales. The Bank of Paige is closed, permanently. Paige. I pressed send. The silence that followed was instant. It was as if I had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. By copying the lawyers, I had turned their guilt-tripping email into evidence. I knew they would see the names in the CC line and freeze. They were bullies, and bullies always crumble when the teacher walks into the room. That evening, I was at my apartment, taping up the final box for my move. The sold sign was already up on the lawn of my new house, and I was moving in 48 hours. At 7 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. My heart gave a little jump, a phantom reflex from the last time. I checked the doorbell camera. It was Officer Carver. But this time, the flashing lights were not manic. The squad car was parked calmly at the curb, its lights off, and Carver was not alone. Standing next to him was a woman in a plain blazer with a badge on her belt. I opened the door. I did not feel afraid. I felt ready. Good evening, Ms. Hamilton, Officer Carver said. He wasn't wearing his hat this time. His face was softer, less guarded. Officer Carver, I said, is everything okay? Everything is fine, he said. This is Detective Vance from the Financial Crimes Unit. We are following up on the report filed by Lakeshore Community Bank regarding a Mr. Ray Ellison. Detective Vance stepped forward. She had a kind face but sharp eyes. Ms. Hamilton, we understand you have some digital evidence that supports the bank's claim, an audio recording and some documents. I do, I said. May we come in? Vance asked. Just to collect the drive and take a brief statement, we want to make sure your side of the story is the one on the official record. I stepped back and held the door wide. Please come in. They walked into my living room. It was different from the last time Carver was here. The air was lighter. The frantic energy of a woman trying to prove her sanity was gone. I walked to my safe. the small, fireproof box sitting on the floor. I spun the combination lock. Click. I took out the USB drive, the little silver stick that held my father's voice, his arrogance, and his confession. I handed it to Detective Vance. "It is all on there," I said. The call where he admits to using my expired license, the PDF of the forgery, and the timeline of my location on that day. Vance took the drive and slipped it into an evidence bag. "Thank you. This makes our job much easier. Identity theft cases are usually hard to prove because it is word against word. But this is solid." Officer Carver was standing by the door, looking at the stack of boxes. He looked at me, and a small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You are packing," he noted. "Moving on Saturday," I said, "to the new house." "Good," he said. He paused, his hand resting on his belt. "You know, Ms. Hamilton, I have been on this force for 20 years. I see a lot of family disputes." He looked me right in the eye. "The first time we came here, we came because someone told us you were the problem," he said quietly. "Tonight, we are here because you decided to protect yourself. That is a hell of a turnaround in 1 week." "I had to be my own witness," I said, repeating the thought I had the day of the closing. "Well, you did good," Carver said. "Most people fold. Most people let the guilt eat them up until there is nothing left. You stood up." "Thank you, officer," I said, and for the first time, I felt the words resonate in my chest. I wasn't just thanking him for doing his job. I was thanking him for validating my reality. "We will be in touch regarding the arraignment," Detective Vance said. "Your father will likely be picked up tomorrow morning. The bank is pushing for charges. It is out of your hands now." "I know," I said. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked. I looked at the empty apartment. I looked at the evidence bag in her hand. I thought about the silence on my phone. "Yes," I said. "I think I'm finally going to be okay." They left. I locked the door. I threw the deadbolt. I went to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. I walked to the window and watched the police car drive away, carrying the weight of my past in a plastic bag. I wasn't the girl who worked at the auto parts store anymore. I wasn't the girl who signed checks to keep the peace. I was Paige Hamilton, homeowner, survivor, and the woman who had just closed the most difficult deal of her life. I took a sip of water. It was crisp and cold. Tomorrow, my father would face a judge. Tomorrow, my mother would have to explain to the neighbors why the police were at her door. Tomorrow, Derek would have to walk. But tonight, I was going to finish packing. I had a house to move into, and for the first time in 30 years, there was plenty of room for me. The morning of the hearing, the sun was streaming through the bay windows of my new living room. It was a different quality of light than what I was used to in the rental apartment. Here, the light hit the hardwood floors I owned, and warmed the air with a smell of oak and fresh drywall. I was sitting on my beige sectional sofa, my legs tucked under me. My laptop was perched on the coffee table, the little green light next to the camera blinking steadily. Next to the computer sat a mug of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. I had not taken a sip since I logged in. This was not a criminal trial. Not yet. This was the civil suit brought by Lakeshore Community Bank against Ray Ellison for recovery of funds and fraud, because of the clear-cut evidence I had provided. The bank had moved for a summary judgment. They were bypassing the long, drawn-out theater of a jury trial and asking a judge to look at the facts and end it. I was there as a witness, but mostly, I was there as a spectator to my own vindication. The screen was split into 4 boxes. Top left was the judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, sitting in a courtroom that looked too brown and too serious for the digital medium. Bottom left was the attorney for Lakeshore Community Bank, a sharp-suited man named Mr. Henderson, who looked bored, like this was the 3rd case of family fraud he had handled before lunch. Top right was me, labeled simply as Paige Hamilton. And in the bottom right square were my parents. They were sitting in their living room, the same room where I had grown up, the same room where I had handed over my paychecks from the auto parts store. My father, Ray, was wearing an old button-down shirt that was tight around the neck. He wasn't wearing a tie. He looked smaller than I remembered, deflated, like a balloon that had been left in the cold. My mother, Linda, sat next to him on the floral print sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. They did not have a lawyer. I learned later that they had tried to hire one, but no attorney in Rochester would take the case once they heard the recording, or maybe Dad just refused to pay a retainer, convinced, as always, that he could charm his way out of anything. "Mr. Ellison," the judge said. Her voice was clear, cutting through the laptop speakers with zero static. "We have reviewed the affidavit from the bank. We have reviewed the security footage. We have reviewed the audio transcript. The bank is asserting that you knowingly forged your daughter's signature to secure a $55,000 vehicle loan. How do you plead to the liability claim?" Dad leaned into the camera. He put on his best reasonable guy face, the one he used to get out of speeding tickets. "Your Honor," he began, his voice booming slightly, distorting the microphone. "Look, with all due respect, this is a big misunderstanding. This is a family matter. My daughter, Paige, she is a good kid, but she is high-strung. We had a verbal agreement, a handshake deal, you know? She agreed to help her brother, but then she got cold feet because she was stressed about her own house moving. She got mad, and now she is trying to punish us." He chuckled nervously, looking at the judge as if they were co-conspirators in dealing with a difficult child. "You know how kids are. They say one thing, then they get emotional. I just signed the paper to expedite things. I was acting as her proxy. It happens all the time in families." I sat perfectly still. My heart was thumping a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. He still believes it. I thought, he actually believes that his version of reality is the only one that matters. The judge did not smile. She did not chuckle. She looked down at the papers on her desk. "Mr. Henderson," the judge said to the bank's lawyer, "your response?" Mr. Henderson didn't even look up from his notes. "Your Honor, I would like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit B, the security footage from the Fairview branch on October 14th at 10:15 in the morning." He shared his screen. The video player replaced the grid of faces. It was black and white, silent footage. It showed the loan officer's desk. There was Ray Ellison, sitting in the chair, laughing, using his hands to tell a story. The chair next to him was empty. The video jumped forward. The loan officer slid a paper across the desk. Ray Ellison picked up a pen. He looked around the room, a quick, furtive glance, and then he bent over the paper. He wrote slowly, deliberately. He wasn't acting as a proxy. He wasn't signing Ray Ellison on the witness line. He was signing Paige Hamilton on the borrower line. Mr. Henderson stopped the video. "The defendant claims this was a proxy signing based on a verbal agreement," Mr. Henderson said, his voice dry. "However, in the audio recording submitted as Exhibit C, Mr. Ellison admits to using an expired identification card belonging to Ms. Hamilton, which had been reported lost 5 years prior. That is not the behavior of a proxy, Your Honor. That is the behavior of an imposter." The screen went back to the grid. Dad's face was red. He was sputtering. "Now hold on," Dad said, pointing a finger at the camera. "That recording, she tricked me. She called me acting all sweet, getting me to say things. That is entrapment. A father shouldn't have to worry about his own daughter wearing a wire." The judge took off her glasses. She looked directly into the camera lens, which meant she was looking directly at him. "Mr. Ellison," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a falling anvil. "Stop talking." Dad's mouth snapped shut. "I have heard enough about family matters," the judge continued. "You are describing fraud as if it were a household chore. You are describing identity theft as if it were a parenting decision." She shuffled the papers. The sound was crisp and loud in the silence of my living room. "This court finds that there was no valid contract between the bank and Ms. Hamilton. The signature is a forgery. The use of the identification was unauthorized. The narrative that this was a consensual family arrangement is contradicted by every piece of physical evidence presented. She looked up again. This is not a family argument, Mr. Ellison. This is a financial crime. You walked into a federally insured institution and pretended to be someone else to extract funds. The fact that the victim is your daughter does not make it less illegal. In fact, it makes it more predatory. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Predatory. For 30 years, I had been told I was selfish. I had been told I was ungrateful. I had been told I owed them everything. And now, a woman in a black robe, a stranger who didn't know my middle name or my favorite color, was looking at my father and telling him exactly what he was. I am granting the summary judgment in favor of Lakeshore Community Bank, the judge ruled. Mr. Ray Ellison is solely liable for the principal amount of $55,000. He is also liable for the accrued interest, the early termination fees, and the bank's legal costs, totaling an additional $12,000. Dad slumped back in the sofa. His mouth hung open. $67,000. It was a ruinous amount for him. He didn't have it. Furthermore, the judge added, I am ordering an immediate correction of Ms. Hamilton's credit report. All inquiries and trade lines associated with this loan are to be expunged within 7 business days. But, Your Honor, Mom suddenly spoke up. Her voice was shrill, trembling. She leaned into the frame, pushing Dad slightly aside. We can't pay that. We are on a fixed income. This will bankrupt us. Paige knows we can't pay that. She looked at the camera. Her eyes locked onto my square in the corner of the screen. Paige, she cried out. Tell her you can help. You can't let them do this to your father. We are your parents. I watched her face. It was the same face that had looked at me when I was 16 and asked for my paycheck. It was the same face that had looked at me when I wanted to take the SAT prep course. It was a face that believed, with absolute certainty, that my purpose on this earth was to be their safety net. On the Zoom interface, a little microphone icon sat in the bottom left corner of my square. It had a red slash through it. Muted. I could have clicked it. I could have unmuted myself. I could have explained to the judge that my parents were elderly, that they made a mistake, that I would work out a payment plan. The old Paige would have done it. The old Paige would have set herself on fire right there on the beige sofa just to stop her mother from crying. I looked at the cursor hovering over the button. Ms. Hamilton, the judge asked, looking at my square. Do you have anything to add before I close the session? Mom's eyes were wide, desperate, pleading. Dad was holding his head in his hands. I moved my hand away from the mouse. I sat back against the cushions of my new couch. I looked at the camera, and I simply shook my head. I remained silent. Very well, the judge said. Judgment is entered. Court is adjourned. The screen went black. The Zoom window closed. The connection was severed. My living room was quiet again. I sat there for a long time. I could hear the faint tick-tock of the wall clock I had hung yesterday. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I could hear the distant sound of a lawnmower outside. It wasn't a triumphant silence. There were no fireworks. I didn't feel like jumping up and down. I felt heavy, but it was a good heaviness. It was the heaviness of an anchor being pulled up, wet and covered in mud, but finally off the bottom of the ocean. I looked at the cold coffee. I picked it up and walked to the kitchen. I poured it down the sink. I watched the brown liquid swirl down the drain. Predatory, I whispered the word to myself, testing how it felt on my tongue. For years, I had let them define the reality of our family. They wrote the script. We are a team. You are the helper. Derek is the star. Today, a judge had taken a red pen to that script and written fraud across the title page. I rinsed the mug and placed it in the dishwasher. My phone, which I had left in the other room, started to buzz. I could hear it vibrating against the countertop. I knew who it was. It would be Mom, screaming, crying, begging. I let it buzz. I walked to the thermostat and adjusted the temperature down 2 degrees. It was my house. I paid the bills. I controlled the climate. Finally, someone outside of the family had stood up for me. Finally, the law had worked. But as I stood in the center of my new kitchen, I realized that the most important verdict hadn't come from the judge. It had come from me, the moment I decided not to click that microphone button. I had sentenced them to the consequences of their own actions, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to file an appeal. 3 days after the judge slammed the gavel down on my father's fraud, I was standing in the middle of my living room, covered in specks of sage green paint. The silence in the house was absolute, and it was beautiful. There were no shouting matches, no frantic phone calls, no demands for money, just the wet slap of the paint roller against the drywall and the hum of the late afternoon sun coming through the windows. I was reclaiming the space. I was covering up the stark white walls of the builder with a color I had chosen, paid for with money I had earned, in a house that was legally, indisputably mine. Then, the chime of the doorbell shattered the peace. It was a melodic, electronic sound, far less aggressive than the heavy pounding of the police knock from 2 weeks ago, but my stomach still tightened. I wiped my hands on a rag and picked up my phone to check the doorbell camera app. My mother, Linda Ellison, was standing on my front porch. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was clutching her handbag to her chest like a shield, her shoulders hunched. But what made me pause was what I saw in the background. Parked at the curb, engine idling, was a police cruiser. Officer Carver was sitting behind the wheel, watching the house. He wasn't there to arrest me. He was there to escort her. He was there to make sure that the civil dispute didn't turn into a criminal disturbance. I took a deep breath. I could have ignored her. I could have let her ring the bell until she gave up. But I knew that if I didn't face this final wave, it would keep crashing against my shore forever. I unlocked the deadbolt. Click. I opened the door, but I did not step back to let her in. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me until it latched. I stood on the welcome mat, a physical barrier between my new life and my old one. "Paige," Mom said. Her voice was thin, trembling. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, and she wasn't wearing makeup, which for Linda Ellison was a sign of total collapse. "You didn't answer my calls." "I told you I wouldn't," I said. My voice was calm, steady. "I told you to talk to my lawyer." "We can't afford a lawyer." "Paige," she whispered, tears instantly welling up. The bank is coming for everything. They are garnishing your father's pension. They are talking about putting a lien on our house in Fairview. Ray, your father hasn't spoken in 2 days. He just sits in the dark." She reached out a hand, but stopped when she saw me flinch. "We are ruined," she sobbed. "Derek's car was repossessed yesterday. He is threatening to leave town. The family is falling apart. Paige, and you are the only one who can stop it." "I didn't start it, Mom," I said. "I didn't forge the signature." "He did it for you," she cried, the old manipulation flaring up like a dying ember. "He did it to help the family, and now you have humiliated him. Please, Paige, I am begging you, call the bank. Tell them you have had a change of heart. Tell them you will assume the loan if they drop the charges against your father. You have this big house now. You have the income. You can handle the payments. We can't." I looked at her, really looked at her, for years. I had seen a mother who was just trying to keep the peace. Now, I saw a woman who was willing to mortgage her daughter's future to pay for her son's mistakes. "I am not doing that," I said. "Why are you so cruel?" she wept, fumbling with the clasp of her oversized handbag. "We are your flesh and blood. How can you stand there and watch us drown?" She finally got the bag open and reached inside for a packet of tissues. As she pulled the tissue out, a folded stack of papers got caught on the zipper and spilled halfway out. I looked down. The papers were upside down, but I recognized the logo. It was a local credit union, not Lakeshore, and across the top of the document, in bold, black letters, were the words, "Home Equity Line of Credit Application, HELOC." My eyes narrowed. I read the text below it. "Property address, 14 Maple Drive, Rochester." That was my address, my new address. And the borrower name typed into the field was Paige M. Hamilton. The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. "What is that?" I asked. My voice dropped to a whisper. Mom looked down, saw the papers, and hurriedly tried to shove them back into the bag. "Nothing. It is just scraps." "Let me see it," I demanded. I didn't wait. I reached out and grabbed the edge of the paper. She tried to pull back, but I held on. I pulled the document free. It was an application for a $75,000 line of credit against the equity of my new house. It was dated for tomorrow. It wasn't signed yet, but the intent was clear. I looked up at her, and the coldness that washed over me was absolute. "You didn't come here to apologize," I said. "You came here to get me to sign this." Mom's face crumbled. She started wringing her hands. "I just thought, if we could talk, if you forgave your father, the only way to pay off the bank and save him from jail is to get a lump sum. You have equity in this house. Paige, it is sitting right here. If we just took out a little bit, we could fix everything. We could pay off the car loan, pay the legal fees, and start fresh. We would pay you back the monthly installments, I promise." "You were going to ask me to mortgage my house," I said, pointing to the door behind me. "The house I have lived in for less than 2 weeks. You wanted me to put my home at risk to pay for the crime Dad committed against me." "It is the only way," she wailed. "Derek needs a fresh start too. If you just help us this one last time, we can all be a family again." "One last time," I repeated. The phrase tasted like ash. I looked at the HELOC application. Then I looked at the police car at the curb. Officer Carver was watching us closely. I realized then that it would never end. If I had paid the $40,000 for the car, they would have asked for $50,000. If I had paid the $50,000, they would be here now asking for the house. If I gave them the house, they would ask for my kidney. To them, I was not a person. I was an asset class. "Mom," I said. She stopped crying and looked at me. A flicker of hope in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought the guilt had finally worked. "I am not signing this," I said. I crumpled the paper in my hand. "And I am not calling the bank." "But Paige—" "Listen to me," I cut her off. My voice was loud enough to carry to the street. "I am not your retirement plan. I am not Derek's insurance policy. And this house is my sanctuary. It will never, ever be collateral for your debts." "You are killing your father," she screamed. "No," I said. "Dad killed the relationship when he stole my identity. You killed it when you tried to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. And you just buried it by bringing a loan application to my doorstep while the police are watching you." "I just wanted to fix it," she sobbed. "I thought if you were soft-hearted, if you remembered how much we loved you." "I remember," I said. "I remember that your love always came with a price tag, and I am done paying it." I turned toward the street and waved my hand. Officer Carver saw the signal. He opened his door and stepped out of the cruiser. He adjusted his belt and walked up the driveway with long, purposeful strides. "Is everything okay here, Ms. Hamilton?" Carver asked, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "My mother was just leaving," I said. "And officer? She brought loan documents to my house, after everything." Carver's face hardened. He looked at my mother. "Mrs. Ellison, we discussed the terms of this visit. No harassment, no financial requests. You are violating the peace." "I am just talking to my daughter," Mom cried. "The conversation is over," Carver said firmly. "You need to get in your vehicle and leave. If you return to this property, Ms. Hamilton has grounds to file for a restraining order. And given the current fraud charges against your husband, I highly suggest you do not give the court more reasons to look at your family." Mom looked at Carver, then at me. She looked at the crumpled paper in my hand. She realized, finally, that the well had run dry. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't say she loved me. She just turned around, her shoulders shaking, and walked down the driveway to her old SUV. I watched her go. I watched her get into the car. I watched Officer Carver wait until she started the engine and backed out of the driveway. He gave me a nod. I nodded back. He got into his patrol car and followed her, a silent guardian escorting the toxicity out of my life. I stood on the porch until both cars disappeared around the corner. The street was quiet again. A bird was chirping in the maple tree I had paid for. I looked at the crumpled HELOC application in my hand. I walked over to the recycling bin on the side of the house and dropped it in. Then, I turned back to my front door. I grabbed the handle. It was solid brass, cold and heavy. I stepped inside. The smell of fresh paint hit me. Clean, chemical, and new. I closed the door. Click. I turned the deadbolt. Thud. I stood there for a moment in the foyer, my hand resting on the lock. They were gone. The debt was gone. The guilt was gone. I picked up the paint roller again. I had a wall to finish. And for the first time in my life, the only thing I owed anyone was a second coat of sage green to myself. Thank you so much for listening to Paige's story. It is a hard journey to walk away from family, even when it is necessary, and I hope this story gave you some strength or at least some entertainment. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while painting your own living room, driving to work, or maybe relaxing with a coffee? Leave a comment below with your location, and let's see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button to support the work, and smash the hype button so more people can hear these stories of justice and resilience. See you in the next one.